Have you ever sat alone in a quiet room, late at night, and felt a truth settle over you so softly that it took your breath away? The house is still. The lights are turned down low. The steady, bustling hum of the day has finally dissolved into silence, leaving you completely exposed to your own thoughts. You pick up your phone, check the screen out of pure habit, and then put it back down face down on the table. In that quiet, heavy moment, a profound realization dawns on you. The rescue you have been waiting for isn't coming. No text message, no knight in shining armor, no sudden twist of fate, and no well-meaning friend is going to step through your door to fix the ache inside your chest. It is a deeply vulnerable crossroad. For so many years, without even realizing it, most of us carry a quiet, unspoken hope. We hope that if we hurt long enough, someone will notice our silent distress. We hope that someone will reach into our chaotic inner world, pull apart the tangled knots of our past, and gently smooth out all the rough edges. We want so desperately to be seen, to be understood, and to be held while someone else puts our pieces back together. But true, lasting healing begins at the exact second we look our life in the eye and acknowledge a simple, terrifying fact. The hero of our story has to be us. Before we walk down this path together, if you are sitting here right now and feeling ready to make that promise to yourself, take a breath. Drop your shoulders, pause for a moment, and write this affirmation in the comments below. I am choosing to take ownership of my healing, and I am worthy of my own care. Let those words be your first active step out of the shadows. Let them stand as a declaration that you are no longer sitting on the sidelines of your own recovery. Recognizing that nobody is coming to save you feels devastating at first. It can feel like a cold rejection, as if the world has turned its back on you and left you to figure it out alone. It feels like stepping off solid ground into thin air with nothing beneath your feet. You might feel a wave of sadness for the child inside you who just wanted someone to hold their hand. You might feel angry that you have to be the strong one yet again. That grief is normal, and it deserves space to breathe. But as the emotional dust begins to settle, that exact same realization slowly transforms into the most liberating truth you will ever encounter. When you realize nobody is coming to save you, you also realize that nobody holds power over your future anymore. You no longer have to wait for someone else to grant you permission to feel better. You don't have to wait for an apology that may never arrive, or for someone from your past to finally understand how much they hurt you. You hold the pen now. Your life, your emotional freedom, your healing, and your peace are entirely in your own hands. You get to decide how you care for yourself today. You get to rebuild your life piece by piece on your own terms, with your own love. The rescue isn't coming from the outside. It is rising up from within you, right now. We spend years constructing subtle, quiet, and subconscious strategies to avoid feeling our own inner discomfort. Think about the small daily routines and repetitive habits we fall into whenever the weight of our thoughts starts to become too heavy to bear. Instead of sitting quietly with our feelings and allowing ourselves to process what hurts, we look for anything outside of ourselves to numb the quiet. We scroll aimlessly through social media feeds without actually seeing what's on the screen. We find ourselves rereading old text messages from months or years ago, searching desperately between the lines for answers or closures that were never truly there. Or maybe we stand in the kitchen, mindlessly replaying a painful past conversation over and over in our heads while making a simple cup of tea, wishing with all our heart that we had said something different, or that they had reacted with a bit more kindness. We constantly search for external solutions to mend our deeply internal aches. We place our healing on hold, convincing ourselves that our peace is delayed only because the world hasn't given us what we need yet. We wait for a partner to finally change their ways. We wait for an old friend to pick up the phone and apologize. We wait for a past wrong to somehow be magically undone by time. In our quietest moments, we imagine a dramatic scene where someone looks us deeply in the eyes and gives us the exact validation, warmth, and understanding we have been starving for since we were young. We tell ourselves, if only they saw my pain, if only they acknowledged what happened, then I could finally breathe again. But while we sit in that posture of waiting, life continues to move forward without pause. The sun rises and sets, the seasons quietly shift, and the world keeps spinning while we remain frozen in place, waiting for a permission slip to heal that will never arrive. The waiting room of life is one of the darkest and most lonely places a person can inhabit. It is a space built entirely out of expectation and silent longing. Living in that waiting room slowly breeds a quiet, simmering resentment. You watch others move on with their lives while you feel trapped in a painful loop, wondering why nobody is reaching back to pull you out of the deep end. But the hardest truth to digest is that as long as you stay in that waiting room, you stay suspended in a state of complete powerlessness. When we place the responsibility for our healing on other people or on future circumstances, we inadvertently hand over the keys to our well-being. We hand over our personal power to the very people who bruised us, or to a world that may never truly understand our depth. We give others the absolute authority to decide when and if we ever get to feel whole, safe, and happy again. We effectively say, "My peace depends on your actions," realizing that you have been waiting for a savior who isn't coming hurts deeply. It feels like a quiet heartbreak inside your own chest. But that exact pain, that friction between who you are and the passive life you've been living, is necessary. It is the awakening call required to break the spell of passivity. It is the moment you realize that sitting by the window waiting for someone to mend your heart is keeping you locked in the very house that caught fire. Waiting for someone else to fix you will only keep you lonely. Choosing to step up for yourself is where your freedom truly begins. Why do we wait in the first place? Where does this deep-seated, persistent belief come from that someone else holds the magic key to our inner restoration? Why is our very first instinct during times of emotional turmoil to look outside of ourselves for a hand to pull us through? To understand why we stay trapped in the cycle of waiting, we have to look back at where our story began and gently examine the way we were built to navigate the world. From the earliest moments of our childhood, we are taught to look upward and outward for safety. When we were small, vulnerable, and completely dependent on others, the world was a vast and terrifying place. When we fell on the playground and scraped a knee, a caring adult was there to apply a bandage, blow on the wound, and wrap us in a warm hug until the crying stopped. When we were confused, scared by the dark, or overwhelmed by big emotions we didn't have words for, someone older stepped in to explain the world to us, soothe our fears, and make everything feel safe again. It was a natural, beautiful, and entirely necessary phase of human development. In childhood, survival depended on having a protector. However, as we step across the threshold into adulthood, that emotional safety net quietly shifts, even if nobody warns us that it has. The core difficulty is that while our physical bodies grow up, our calendar years add up, and our responsibilities pile high, our emotional conditioning often remains secretly attached to that early expectation of outward rescue. Deep down, a quiet part of us is still that scared little kid sitting on the curb, waiting for a trusted adult to drive up, take the wheel, and tell us that everything is going to be all right. Because of this hidden conditioning, we enter our adult relationships expecting them to function like those early safety nets. We search for a partner, a mentor, or a close friend to heal the deep, aching wounds that they did not inflict. We ask our current circumstances to somehow reach back into time and make up for past disappointments. We tell ourselves that if we can just find the right person to love us enough, our inner emptiness will magically disappear. But an adult cannot be saved in the same way a child can. Expecting another adult to step into your life and fix your emotional world puts an impossible, unfair burden on them and leaves you perpetually disappointed. True adult healing requires a completely different approach. It requires personal agency, real intentionality, and a courageous willingness to pull back the blanket, sit with what hurts, and address it ourselves without expecting an external party to absorb the pain for us. When you dissect this expectation of rescue, you realize that it isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It is simply an outdated coping mechanism that you outgrew a long time ago. Recognizing this truth allows you to hold your past with immense compassion while firmly stepping into your present power. You begin to understand that the protective adult you have been searching for out in the world is no longer someone else. It is the person you see in the mirror every single morning. There comes a pivotal, quiet moment in your journey where you have to stand in front of the mirror strip away the masks you wear for the outside world, and truly look at yourself. Not just a quick glance as you brush your teeth or fix your hair before rushing out the door, but a deep, unhurried gaze into your own eyes. You are forced to see the tired, resilient human looking back at you. The person who has carried every tear, every quiet heartache, every hidden anxiety, and every unspoken hope that no one else ever witnessed. It takes immense, staggering courage to lower your defensive walls, quiet the inner noise, and acknowledge your own unmet needs. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung reflected deeply on human self-perception, the struggle of personal growth, and the sheer discomfort of confronting who we really are beneath our carefully curated public selves. He once observed, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." When we slow down and truly digest what Jung meant, it becomes painfully clear why complete self-acceptance feels so overwhelming and intimidating. Accepting yourself completely means standing before your own reflection without any excuses, without any polished narratives, and without pointing fingers at the people who hurt you. It means looking directly at your strengths, your suffering, and your beauty, while simultaneously acknowledging your mistakes, your toxic habits, your unhealed patterns, and your tendency to pull back or sabotage good things when life demands real growth from you. It means stopping the relentless, exhausting search for someone else to validate your worth, fix your insecurities, or tell you that you are enough. Looking in the mirror forces you to confront the uncomfortable truth. You cannot heal a person you are constantly running away from, and you cannot transform a life you refuse to look at honestly. We spend so much energy running away from our flaws and hiding our messy, vulnerable parts from the world, secretly hoping someone will come along and love those parts for us. But no amount of external love can make up for the absence of your own acceptance. When you stand in front of that glass, look past the exhaustion in your eyes and accept who you are right now in this exact moment, with all your unresolved grief, your flawed reactions, your raw scars, and your unfinished progress. A massive shift happens within you. You stop running from your own life. You stop waiting for someone else to grant you beauty or worth. You finally wrap your arms around your whole story, lay down the weight of hiding, and stand firmly on your own ground. Pain is a master communicator, yet we spend so much of our lives treating it like an unwanted enemy intruder. The second, an emotional ache begins to swell inside our chest. Our immediate, instinctive reaction is to push it down, mask it, or run away as fast as we can. Think about the countless, subtle ways we attempt to outrun an uncomfortable emotion throughout the day. We pick up our phones and scroll mindlessly through old photo archives. We spend hours reorganizing bookshelf folders or drawer spaces, or we drown ourselves in endless task lists, overworking just to avoid facing some uninterrupted minutes of quiet reflection with our own heart. We run because we are afraid that if we stop and actually feel the pain, it will swallow us whole. We worry that if we let ourselves cry, the tears will never stop falling, or that if we acknowledge our deep disappointment, it will break us beyond repair. But pain is not proof that you are fundamentally broken. It is simply gentle, persistent evidence that a part of you is desperately asking for your attention. Think about how physical pain works in your body. When you accidentally touch a scorching hot stove, a sharp flash of pain shoots through your nerve endings, instantly signaling your brain to pull your hand away to protect your skin from further damage. Emotional pain operates in the exact same way. It is an internal alarm system, signaling that a boundary has been crossed. An old wound needs tender care, or an aspect of your life is no longer serving your true well-being. When you finally stop running from your pain and choose to turn around and face it, its entire texture begins to change. The scary monster in the closet loses its terrifying power to intimidate you the moment you pull back the curtain and look directly at it. When you allow yourself to sit quietly in a soft room with your sadness, your anxiety, your grief, or your heavy disappointment, without frantically trying to fix it, judge it, or rush it out the door, you discover something remarkable. You learn that emotional storms are not permanent fixtures. They are temporary weather patterns passing through your inner sky. They rise, they roll in with thunder, they reach a peak intensity. And then, if you simply let them be, they gradually pass. Sitting with your pain teaches you that you are vast enough to hold your own discomfort. You realize that you do not need an external hero to sweep in and silence your inner storms, because you have the capacity to sit through the rain with yourself. Beneath every layer of pain you dare to welcome and feel, there is a quiet, valuable insight waiting to be uncovered, a lesson teaching you what you truly need, what you must let go of, and how to gently guide yourself back home to peace. There is a subtle, quiet, but deeply profound difference between enduring your life and actively owning your life. Enduring is passive. It means putting your head down, gritting your teeth, and silently suffering through difficult conditions while holding on to a faint hope that time alone will somehow mend the damage. We tell ourselves that if we can just survive the week, survive the month, or survive the year, the bleeding will stop on its own. But time does not heal wounds by itself. Time only offers you open space. What you choose to do within that space is what ultimately determines whether you grow, heal, or remain forever stuck in the exact same painful place. Active ownership begins the very second you decide to shift your inner language and take your power back. Instead of constantly looking backward and asking, "Why did this terrible thing happen to me?" you turn your eyes forward and ask, "What am I going to do with what happened?" Consider a deeply meaningful insight from the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, who captured this exact turning point when he wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." When you slow down and let Jung's words settle into your heart, they break the spell of victimhood. They remind us that while we cannot go back in time and rewrite our past, change the choices of others, or undo the painful events that broke us, we retain absolute unshakable authority over how we respond right now in the present moment. You are not defined by the losses you suffered, the unfair conditions you grew up in, the harsh words spoken to you, or the painful absence of support when you needed it most. Those events are chapters in your story, but they are not the author of your book. Your true identity is shaped by the deliberate choices you make today. Taking ownership means choosing to rebuild your life, even when the initial foundations were shattered by circumstances entirely beyond your control. It means acknowledging that while the damage was not your fault, the recovery is still your responsibility. The transition from enduring to owning is where you stop waiting for the world to apologize to you before you start living. It is where you put down the heavy, exhausting weight of waiting for someone else to make it right, and you pick up the tools to build a safe, peaceful life for yourself. You stop asking, "Who is going to fix this?" And you start declaring, "I am taking care of this." That subtle mental shift changes everything. It transforms you from a helpless bystander in your own tragedy into the brave, intentional creator of your future. Reclaiming your agency is rarely a grand, cinematic event. It is a quiet, steady, and deliberate series of choices made every single day when no one else is watching. It is the brave act of taking back the steering wheel of your life after spending years in the passenger seat, waiting for someone else to choose the destination. When you have spent a long time feeling helpless or dependent on external validation, claiming your power can feel unfamiliar and overwhelming. But agency is not about having everything figured out. It is simply about realizing that you have the right to participate in your own life. It looks like setting a firm, calm boundary when you feel overwhelmed, rather than nodding along and saying yes out of a long-standing habit of people-pleasing. It looks like allowing yourself to rest without guilt when your spirit is depleted, rather than driving yourself to absolute emotional exhaustion just to meet unrealistic standards set by others. Reclaiming your agency means listening to the quiet voice inside you that says, "No more," and trusting that voice over the noise of everyone else's expectations. True agency begins when you clearly recognize where your influence ends and where your personal responsibility begins. For so long, we burn through our precious energy trying to manage things entirely outside our control. You cannot control how other people perceive you, how they react to your choices, or whether they ever choose to treat you with the care and respect you deserve. You cannot control the past, and you cannot force someone to understand your pain. However, you have complete, absolute control over how you speak to yourself when you stumble and fall. You have control over how you treat your body, what you feed your mind, and where you choose to direct your energy each morning. You get to decide who gets access to your heart and how much power you give to old, painful memories. When you reclaim your agency, you stop waiting for a golden invitation or a formal permission slip to change your life. You realize you don't need anyone's approval to start taking care of your emotional well-being, nor do you need a unanimous vote from the people around you to step in a new direction. You don't need a blessing to start speaking to yourself with gentle kindness instead of harsh criticism. Every time you choose to honor your own boundaries, every time you choose self-compassion over self-judgment, and every time you step toward what nourishes your heart, you are reclaiming a piece of yourself that you previously handed away. You become the active, loving guardian of your own life, moving forward not because the path is easy, but because you finally trust yourself to walk it. Healing does not mean erasing your past, wiping your memory clean, or pretending that difficult, heartbreaking experiences never happened to you. True recovery is not about perfection. It is about integration. It is the delicate, patient work of taking the fragmented, uncomfortable, and tender parts of your history and gently weaving them into a whole, coherent understanding of who you are today. You do not have to cut away pieces of your story to move forward. You simply have to bring them into the light. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung spent much of his life studying how human beings manage the hidden parts of themselves, the secrets, the shame, and the pain they prefer to ignore or push down into the dark. He offered a profound insight into this struggle when he noted, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When you pause and let Jung's words echo through your heart, they cut straight to the core of why so many of us feel trapped in repeating, painful cycles. When we refuse to look at our old wounds, our unexpressed grief, or the defensive habits we formed just to survive, those hidden elements do not simply disappear. They sit quietly in the basement of our minds, silently driving our reactions, our choices, and our relationships. We find ourselves reacting with sudden anger to minor misunderstandings because they secretly trigger an old, unhealed fear of being abandoned. We push loving people away when things get too close because we learned early on that relying on others felt unsafe and uncertain. We exhaust ourselves trying to achieve perfection because an unexamined part of us still believes we must earn the right to be loved. When we don't understand these hidden motivations, we feel helpless, as if an invisible force called fate keeps dragging us back into the same painful stories. Integrating the shadows of yesterday means having the courage to step down into that basement with a warm lantern. It means looking at those hurt, defensive parts of yourself not with harsh judgment or disgust, but with deep, compassionate understanding. You begin to say to yourself, "I see why I developed that habit. I see why I stayed quiet for so long. I see why I built those high walls around my heart. I was just trying to keep myself safe." Bringing those unconscious patterns into clear view strips them of their silent, coercive power over your life. You stop being controlled by past heartbreaks because you are no longer trying to hide from them. Instead of letting old wounds run the show, you honor what they taught you. Forgive yourself for the ways you tried to survive and choose new, constructive ways to respond today. You realize that your past may have shaped your starting point, but it no longer gets to dictate where your story goes. Self-reliance is rarely built in grand, dramatic gestures or sweeping declarations made under the spotlight. It is constructed quietly, brick by brick, in the mundane, unsung moments of your everyday life. It is forged in the silent spaces of the early morning and the late afternoon, in the small, seemingly insignificant commitments you make to yourself and actually keep when nobody else is watching, evaluating, or applauding you. For so long, many of us spend our lives treating our own needs like an afterthought. We willingly bend over backward to keep promises to friends, employers, partners, and strangers, yet we routinely break the promises we make to our own hearts. Think about how you treat your own time and your own energy. When you schedule a quiet half hour in your day to read a book, go for a simple walk outside, or just sit on the couch and rest your mind. Do you honor that time with the same unwavering respect you would give an important appointment with someone else? Or do you brush it aside the moment someone demands something from you, quietly telling yourself that your time doesn't really matter? Every time you break a promise to yourself, you send a quiet, subtle signal to your own subconscious that you are not important, that your needs are secondary, and that you cannot be relied upon when things get tough. Building true self-reliance means reversing that habit. It means learning to treat your commitments to yourself as sacred and non-negotiable. It begins with creating small, steady, daily rituals that ground you in your own strength. These are not overwhelming tasks meant to exhaust you or add to a long, stressful to-do list. They are gentle anchors designed to keep you steady when the waves of life feel overwhelming. Consider how your morning begins. Instead of immediately grabbing your phone the second your eyes open, flooding your brain with other people's lives, news, demands, and opinions, what if you gave yourself just 10 minutes of silence? What if you used those first few moments to simply feel your breath, stretch your body, and check in with yourself before letting the world in? That small boundary is a powerful declaration that your inner peace matters more than the chaotic noise outside. Think about the weight of the thoughts you carry around all day. When your mind feels heavy and cluttered with anxieties, old memories, or unspoken worries, pick up a plain notebook and write down your raw, unfiltered thoughts. You don't need to write eloquent prose or worry about neat handwriting. You simply need to pour what hurts out of your head and onto the page. By externalizing your thoughts, you give your mind room to breathe, separating who you truly are from the temporary emotions passing through you. Take a step outside during the day, even if it is only for a few minutes. Stand still. Close your eyes and feel the cool air on your skin. Listen to the wind through the trees. Notice the sky above you. And pay attention to the natural, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Remind yourself that you are alive, that you are grounded on this earth and that you have survived every difficult day up to this point. When you honor these gentle, daily routines, something deep within you begins to heal. You stop looking around the room for someone to ground you because you have learned how to ground yourself. You stop desperately seeking external reassurance to feel okay because you have built a quiet, steady confidence within your own heart. These practical, daily acts signal to your subconscious that you are reliable, that you are capable, and that you are fiercely, permanently committed to your own well-being. As you walk this quiet, courageous path of self-discovery, something truly remarkable begins to happen inside you. The cold, terrifying realization that nobody is coming to save you slowly transforms into a warm, unshakable inner strength. What once felt like a devastating rejection from the universe softens into your greatest source of peace. You stop feeling like a helpless visitor in your own life, waiting for someone else to open the doors, and you step fully into your role as the architect of your own future. You begin to notice that the safe refuge you spent years frantically seeking in other people was actually waiting inside your own heart all along. You had the keys the entire time. You become the gentle, non-judgmental presence who listens to you when you are sad, instead of scolding yourself for feeling down. You become the soft voice that encourages you when you feel hesitant, timid, or afraid to take a leap. You become the firm protector who steps up to enforce healthy boundaries when your peace is tested, declaring without hesitation that your well-being is worth defending. You realize that becoming your own haven does not mean you will never feel lonely, sad, or overwhelmed again. It doesn't mean you build impassable fortress walls to keep the world out, or that you refuse to let love and human connection in. Rather, it means that when the inevitable storms of life roll through, when a relationship ends, when a plan fails, when disappointment stings, or when the world feels far too heavy, you no longer collapse into self-abandonment. You no longer run away from yourself in search of a distraction. Instead, you step inward. You pull up a chair inside your own mind, wrap yourself in warmth, and say, "I am right here with you. We are going to get through this together." Think about how much energy you used to burn searching for approval, validation, and safety outside of yourself. You looked for it in the eyes of partners who couldn't love you properly, in friendships that drained you, in achievements that left you feeling empty, and in the constant, exhausting effort to please everyone around you. Becoming your own haven means putting down that crushing weight for good. It means recognizing that you do not need to perform, prove, or strive to be worthy of your own love and tenderness. You are worthy of shelter simply because you are here, breathing, surviving, and doing the best you can with what you have. Healing is not a magical, faraway destination where you arrive and, suddenly, live in a state of continuous perfection without ever experiencing pain again. It is an ongoing, living, breathing relationship with yourself. A lifelong commitment to keep showing up with unconditional gentleness, radical honesty, and quiet courage. It is choosing yourself over and over again, especially on the days when you make mistakes, stumble, or feel like you are taking 2 steps backward. The realization that nobody is coming to save you is no longer a source of sorrow, grief, or bitterness. It is your ultimate breakthrough. It is the moment you reclaim your life, your dignity, and your joy. You no longer have to sit by the window, waiting for a savior to arrive. You can look in the mirror, smile through the tears, and realize the truth. You are here. You are capable. You are whole. And you are already saving yourself. We have walked a long, deep, and deeply personal path together through these pages. We started in the stillness of that quiet room late at night, confronting the heavy realization that the rescue we had spent years waiting for was never going to come from the outside world. We looked closely at the loneliness of that waiting room, dissected the childlike expectations of rescue we carried into adulthood, and summoned the courage to look into the mirror to face our true reflection. We learned how to read the language of our pain, shifted from passive endurance to active ownership, reclaimed our personal agency, integrated the quiet shadows of our past, and built steady, daily rituals of self-reliance. Now, we stand together at the threshold of a new beginning. When you first started listening to or reading this journey, the idea that nobody is coming to save you might have felt like a sharp, cold sting. It might have felt like a door slamming shut in your face, leaving you stranded in the dark to figure out life all on your own. It is completely natural to feel a sense of grief when that old, comforting narrative falls away. We are conditioned from a very young age to believe that if we suffer long enough, if we are good enough, or if we just endure enough pain, a savior will eventually notice our quiet distress and sweep in to fix everything that feels broken. But as you have seen through every step of this journey, the disappearance of that savior is not a tragedy. It is the exact moment your real life begins. When you accept that no one else is responsible for your emotional restoration, the heavy weight of waiting drops from your shoulders. You stop living your life in a state of quiet suspension. You stop asking people who don't have the capacity to care for you to give you the love you refuse to give yourself. You stop expecting your current relationships to fix past disappointments, and you stop letting unhealed wounds dictate how you react to the present moment. You realize that the strength, the comfort, the safety, and the sanctuary you spent years searching for in other people were not lost out in the world. They were simply waiting for you to turn inward and claim them. Healing is not a linear road where you make perfect progress every single day. There will still be moments when old habits try to pull you back into passivity. There will be rainy afternoons when you feel overwhelmed, when an old ache resurfaces, or when you catch yourself wishing that someone else would step in and take the wheel. When those moments happen, Do not judge yourself or feel like you have failed. Growth is not about never feeling pain again. It is about how you respond to yourself when the pain arrives. Instead of running away, distracting yourself, or falling back into the lonely waiting room, you now have the tools and the self-awareness to step into your own inner haven. You know how to sit quietly with your emotions without panic. You know how to set firm boundaries that protect your peace. You know how to honor the small promises you make to yourself each morning. You have become your own safe place to land. You are no longer waiting to be rescued because you have quietly, steadily, and courageously become the hero of your own story. As we bring this entire journey to a close, take a slow, deep breath. Drop your shoulders away from your ears. Unclamp your jaw, and let the truth of how far you have come settle into your heart. You are still here. You have survived every single hard day, every quiet heartbreak, and every moment you thought you wouldn't make it through. That resilience did not come from an outside force. It came directly from you.